and take some tools from it. And those of us who want to renew our vows and refuge and to take for the first time if we'd like. But if not, that's fine. Just putting it into the mind, trying to hear the meaning of it, the logic of it, the application of it, not just hear as interesting theories or rituals. Even if we hear 1% that's useful, practice that. That's amazing. And practice why. Take these tools for what? For what? To help us develop our marvelous potential so we can help others. That's it. Sangha Chadang Soke Chognam La Janchu Badu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Penche Sangha Drupa Shog Sangha Chadang Soke Chognam La Janchu Badu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Penche Sangha Drupa Shog Sangha Chadang Soke Chognam La Janchu Badu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Chernyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Penche Sangha Drupa Shog. All right. So this lam rim, this term we all hear 1,000 times when the Gelugpas, or maybe we'll hear it's a variation of it in the different traditions, it's referring to this packaging, this particular way of presenting, packaging the entire body of knowledge that they study for 20, 25 years in all the different monastic university systems in Tibet, coming from India. The Nalanda tradition, as His Holiness says. So the lam rim is a way of presenting all of this, body of knowledge, but taking the essential points from it all and presenting it in an orderly way, orderly according to the capacity of the disciple, like any body of knowledge that you learn, and taught, particularly getting the experiential taste of these teachings. It's easy. I mean, we're super educated in our culture, and it's easy to get very caught up intellectually in all the marvelous and interesting ideas. But if we don't get to see the experiential application of these ideas, we're in big trouble. It stays in our head. It's like being so clever, you learn every cake recipe in the universe, but you totally forget to make the cake. You think you're a good cook. You'd be laughed at, wouldn't you? Or know all the musical theories, but not knowing how to play it on the piano. That's the danger for us in the West, because we're so educated, And Lama Yeshe would always stress this. He said, often he said, when people start to learn Tibetan and become scholars, they forget to practice, This is really crucial. And this lam rim, this way of presenting these teachings, it's presented from the experiential point of view. So it's also, naturally then it's presented in stages, like all bodies of knowledge. You don't start music at the advanced level and go backwards. You start at the simple level and go forwards. Like all knowledge is like that. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and eventually you graduate. We get this. So from that perspective, refuge and karma, where does that fit? It fits in the first level. They talk about the 3 scopes. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche respectfully, honoring the lineage, would say that the first level of teachings are those practices and teachings suitable to the disciple of the least capability. That's quite a mouthful. So sometimes, speaking in a cliched way, I say that's junior school. And we kind of get that. We understand what that means. Experientially, we understand at the beginning. Then you've got high school. Then you've got university. Then you've got postgraduate. It's a good analogy, So refuge and karma are right at the beginning. The very first thing that Buddha gets us to do is in order to energize us, not to waste this precious life, is to think about impermanence for a start. Give us a wake-up call to realize we're going to die at any minute, even though we don't realize it. We're so clinging and grasping and believing in the permanent me. So he tries to loosen the grip on that to give us the enthusiasm to want to not waste this precious life. And then we think about the likely possibilities of the types of suffering rebirths as a result of this when we do die, and then we get to start to practice. So whom can I turn to? Whom can I turn to? It's like, you learn about disease, you learn about, diabetes. And you think about that and you think, my God, I don't want diabetes. And think, well, whom can I turn to educate me? You turn to your doctor. Well, whom can I turn to think about to help me not have suffering? in the future? Well, we turn to our doctor. And here the Buddha is our doctor, not our creator. He's not shoving it down our throats. He's not forcing us to believe it. None of that's the issue. That's not relevant. It's a question of turning to somebody whom you, so then you check up. And this is the thing about refuge. We check up, what is the Buddha? What is the Dharma? What are these three jewels they talk about, Because we're going to rely upon them. What is this doctor? What is their advice? Because we're going to rely upon that doctor and their advice. So it's reasonable you use your noggin. Don't just jump in and leap in and choose some cute doctor because he's cute. That's hardly the basis of choosing a doctor. Same with the Buddha. Oh, I like the Buddha. He looks nice, I might take refuge in him. That's ridiculous. So taking refuge is the first thing in this packaging, and then you start to take the advice. And the advice, the medicine, is to stop future suffering, as we discussed yesterday. The medicine, the advice to stop future suffering is to stop causing it. If you don't want diabetes, well, honey, don't cause it. Don't just cross your fingers and hope you won't get it. You make sure you know what the causes of diabetes are, so you stop causing it. Well, here, the same. You don't want future suffering, given that we take the view that our mind will continue, take that as our hypothesis here. Even if you can't cope with the concept of being born as a dog or an ant or a cockroach or something, which we always make jokes about in the West, like it's hilarious. Even if you can't get your head around that, even if you can think, well, at least I might get another decent human form, well, you know very well, look around the world, look at the human bodies on this planet, and look at the miserable lives they have. Because karma ripens in 4 ways, remember? One is a type of rebirth. Then within that rebirth is your mind, your tendencies. I mean, Hitler's got a human body, and so has Mother Teresa. What's the difference between them? They've got 2 legs, they've got a couple of legs each, a couple of eyes, a nose, feet in the right position. What's the difference? Their mind. It's so obvious. It's their mind that's the difference. And what's the tendencies in their minds? You can see by the behavior what's in their minds. So we want decent tendencies in the mind. Kind, loving, compassionate, non-killing, non-harming, non-stealing. Second, we want the consequences of those, which is have good experiences at the hands of others. We want a decent human body. We're going to be born in environments with people. So we want to have nice people in our lives, not ones who beat us up or rape us or murder us or think we're horrible. It's pretty evident. So you want that, good experiences, and you want a decent environment. You don't want to be sick the whole time and have water that's polluted and air that's polluted. So what's the solution? If you want that, what's the solution? Cause that. Don't cause the opposite. That's abiding by the laws of karma. That's the starting point of actual practice. So refuge, nice phrase. We don't think like that. Usually take refuge in something. The meaning is fairly evident. You take refuge in something when when you're in trouble. It's to protect you from trouble, isn't it? You take refuge under an umbrella when it's raining. You take refuge in a refuge when you've been, you've got an abusive husband. You run away to a refuge, don't you? Refuge. We understand the word. So rely upon means rely upon. So we want a spiritual practice. We don't want future suffering. Whom are we going to rely upon? Well, here in this room, we're talking about the Buddha. You don't have to rely upon the Buddha. You can rely upon Lenin, Marx, whoever you like. It's up to you. So here we're talking Buddha or Jesus or whatever you want. It's up to you. So here we're talking Buddha. So what's Buddha? What's the word mean? So the way they talk, you hear about the 3 jewels, the 3 jewels. Buddha, his teachings, and the community of practitioners. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, these 3 Sanskrit words. So we should know what a Buddha is. What is the meaning of the word Buddha? Well, Buddha is the term in Sanskrit referring to a person who's done the job of ridding the mind of all the rubbish and developing to perfection all the goodness. Sounds pretty simple. So the word Buddha also is referring to the actual Buddha. They talk about the absolute Buddha, but keep it simple. The actual word Buddha refers to the fully developed mind of a person who's done this job. And the Buddha's telling us everyone's got that potential. We all possess Buddha nature. What that means is, we don't talk like that. What that means is every being, every mind, every person, every mind possessor, every human, dog, animal, creature, bug, slug, pedophile, monster, every being, every mind, every person possesses just naturally that potential. That's what Buddha has observed. That is the natural potential of all sentient beings. That's what Buddha nature refers to. that our mind is not intrinsically deluded. The delusions in our mind, the neuroses, this grasping and this inherent me, the attachment to get what that me wants, the aversion and panic attack when it doesn't, and all the other dramas are not intrinsic to us. This is a pretty profound concept. We instinctively assume they are. And in our modern psychological views and neuroscientific views, we absolutely give equal status to those neuroses and the virtues in the mind, like goodness and kindness and love and compassion and intelligence. We give them equal status. So it's quite shocking to hear the Buddha makes this distinction and says that the neurotic ones, which are the source of our pain and the source of why we harm others, look at the world, but they're not at the core of our being. That's his finding. It's a pretty amazing concept. Quite shocking initially. But we don't need them. They cause us suffering, and we can get rid of them. And we can develop to perfection all the goodness within us. That's the Buddha's view. That's the basis of practice. So a person who's achieved that is called a Buddha. Buddha, Sanskrit. So it's a pretty outrageous. I mean, it's got pretty outrageous qualities. You know, like this is where it sounds pretty shocking. That mind, when it's fully developed, which is not physical, remember, our minds are not physical either, but they're stuck in this body due to countless lifetimes of grasping, but completely attached to this shape, this nose, this ear, this eyes, this body. We consider that is me. So our mind, which is not physical, is stuck in this body right now. We can't see past our own nose. We don't remember 99% even of today, and it's only 11:30. If you had to write down every millisecond of what you thought and done and said today, we'd all be miserable failures, because we live at the gross level of our mind, the conceptual level, which is limited in its capacity for cognition. But this mind has got this incredible potential, infinitely way more than we could even possibly imagine, taking the modern view of the mind. But this mind is not physical. We can rid the mind utterly of all delusions. We can grow to perfection utterly, all the positive qualities. So that mind, when it's developed to that degree, that mind, one, pervades the universe. It exists wherever there is existence. I used to love it's similar to the Christian concept. I used to love the idea when I was a Catholic. I loved the idea as a little girl. I loved the idea that God is everywhere. That was really, I didn't think about God as my creator. I didn't worry about that. I think I must have been a Buddhist from the time I was little. I heard it more like it was a Buddhist ear, you know. I never thought of him as my creator. I loved this concept of God is everywhere. I couldn't understand it. I'd always think God's in the light switch, and I'd think God's in the margin of my homework book. I struggled to understand what he meant. God is everywhere. Well, that's the view here. This consciousness, which is not physical, when it's finally removed of all delusions and all neuroses, how can it be confined by space or time or matter? Not possible. So as much as we can, even intellectually, get our head around this idea, this enlightened energy, and omniscience is one of the first qualities, like the Christian teaching. Many similarities, many fundamental differences too. It pervades the universe. It is wherever there is existence, as much as we can try and get our head around that concept. It's infinitely wise, infinitely compassionate. All sense of a separate self is gone. All sense of all the voices of that separate self, these neurotic delusions, have gone. There's only wisdom and compassion and goodness and a sense of connectedness with all beings as if they were oneself. As much as we can get our head around these concepts, that's a Buddha. Perfect wisdom, infinite compassion, the wish to benefit sentient beings, infinite wisdom to see how to benefit sentient beings, and the effortless ability to do so. Now, this is where it's pretty cosmic. This ability of this mind, the power, wisdom, compassion, power, the three central qualities of a Buddha's mind. Well, this power is referring to this effortless ability, when that mind has become enlightened, to manifest in countless bodies, hear my words please, to manifest effortlessly in countless bodies throughout countless universes for countless eons, to be of benefit to countless sentient beings. That's pretty science fiction. This is the teachings of the Buddha. This is the Mahayana teachings. So that's the meaning of the Buddha. And that person, that being, that mind, they've gone well beyond needing bags of bones. They don't need bodies, you know. So that's the meaning of absolute Buddha, this all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-wise, all-powerful, all-pervasive, unmanifest consciousness. Now, what drove that person to become that Buddha is their compassion, which is meaning the wish to benefit sentient beings. So what good is that? We can't access subtle, unmanifest mind. So the Buddhas, out of compassion, manifest as so-called relative Buddha, the body, a body. They take bodies. So we see the body of Shakyamuni Buddha, the monk. Must be a statue here somewhere. There he is, up there, looking all holy and nice. Look at him, with his lump on his head, his Ushnisha. And that's the form of the Buddha, roughly speaking, when he was born as an Indian person back a couple of thousand years ago, isn't it? 2,500 years ago or something like that. In this tradition, in this Indian amazing environment where there are an incredible number of great thought thinkers, yogis, meditators, spiritual practitioners, coming from this Indian tradition, these amazing spiritual practitioners. Well, he came out of that tradition and then diverted in his own direction, specifically in relation to his own experiential findings about the nature of self. As the Dalai Lama says, it was these Indians before the Buddha who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. As I always like to remind us, it wasn't Freud, like we think, 100 years ago perhaps. We think we're so clever. This India means at it for thousands of years, you know. So Buddha came out of that amazing tradition. They diverged in his own direction, in his relation to his own experiential findings about nature of self, in particular the ultimate teachings about emptiness. And then he taught for the rest of his life until he died at 80 or something. I forget what age. Such statues is a depiction of the Buddha at the time. The way he sort of, and it's a depiction of the enlightened Buddha when he sat under the tree in Bodh Gaya. So if you come on this pilgrimage with me to India and Nepal, which we've been doing for 100 years, sorry, I'm not that old, 20 years, sorry, exaggerate. Maybe I'll do it for 100 years, you never know. We go to Bodh Gaya, but he got enlightened, you know. So we go to these places. So that's the relative Buddha. That's the one we're relying upon. So it's his teachings. The second of these three jewels is his teachings, the Dharma, as they call it in Sanskrit. So the absolute Buddha is the all-knowing, unmanifest consciousness, and the relative Buddha, one we need so we can see, because we're not clever enough to see an abstract mind, a pure unmanifest mind, is the relative Buddha. So then we check up on him. We don't just jump in and think Buddha's cute, I'd like to rely upon him. No. Like I said, you don't just check up on any old doctor, and because they're cute, you don't rely upon them for that reason. That's the wrong reason. You check up because you've used your intelligence, you check on the teachings, you read the books. And of course, the major way we learn that these days is by meeting people like His Holiness Dalai Lama, these holy beings who represent the teachings of the Buddha. That gives us confidence. We check up on the Buddha. We have some confidence. Then we hear how you do that is by reading the teachings, isn't it? Well, the absolute Dharma, as they call it, think about this, it's logical, is the knowledge in that mind. The knowledge in that mind. So, you know, the absolute Dharma is the knowledge in that mind. But we can't access that. I think of ordinary examples again, like Bach, you know, the marvelous composer. The actual knowledge about music is the actual music. The sound that comes out, what we hear, is the evidence of what's in his mind. So the actual knowledge about music is in the mind of Bach, but we can't access his mind, can we? So he writes on this on this strange language on pieces of paper, so we can learn it and become our own Bach. That's the Buddha's words. Buddha's words are that, the books, the CDs, the DVDs, our computers, our iPads, whatever, containing this Dharma. That's the relative Dharma. And that's the main one we rely upon. You can look at Buddha for 27 years. He's very cute and nice, makes you feel good. But if he doesn't open his mouth, what good is it? You know, if Bach sits there having all that music in his mind, but doesn't, you know, open his mouth and explain it to you, what good is it? That's the actual refuge. What we rely upon is that, the Dharma, Buddha's words. And the so-called Sangha, the spiritual community, are the practitioners of these things, you know. So you need that. If you're going to play tennis, you need you need Roger Federer, you need his instructions, and you need people to play with. You can't hit tennis balls to yourself. Well, here, you know, it's encouraging to have a community of practitioners with whom we can relate and identify with and who are practicing the same as us, because we need that kind of confidence. We need to be supported by each other. That's the relative Sangha. But that actually is the Absolute Sangha. They talk about the Absolute Sangha is those, there's a term in in Sanskrit. Once you realize emptiness, once you've cut the root of the delusions, you become what they call a superior being. Now that's a term they use in Christianity, isn't it? There's only one of them, and it's called God. They don't mean it like that here. You become a superior being, Arya being, you know, when you realize emptiness, and you now have got, you're now all these Arya beings, all the way from the person who's realized emptiness up to the Buddha. They're called the superior beings. That's the Absolute Sangha. They're the actual practitioners. That's when the knowledge is real for them, not just intellectual. That's the actual Sangha. But again, you can't recognize that person. Could be the homeless person down the road, the smelly old homeless person you think is ugly, and you've got to cross the road to avoid him. He could be an Arya being, you don't know. There's a saying in Tibetan, you don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. It's quite a powerful concept, actually. So anyway, the Arya, the superior beings, are those ones. But that we can't recognize. So there's the relative Sangha for the Buddha, the relative spiritual community, is a general like this. This is our Sangha. But actually, the Buddha refers to the monks and nuns, anybody living in the fullness of his Vinaya, his body of discussions and instructions of discipline and behavior. So anybody who's fully ordained, full ordination, monk or nun, male or female. Buddha didn't have a category called non-binary. You have to put yourself in with girl or boy category. It's a bit limited now these days, isn't it? I mean, we're a bit... Anyway, whatever. Cracking jokes. So anyway, I think I'm non-binary, actually. If I think about it, I'm happy to say I'm a girl, but I don't feel like a girl. I don't feel like a boy. I mean, I look like a girl. I've got the bits of a girl. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I don't feel like a girl. I don't know what a girl feels like. I don't know what a boy feels like either, but... Do you understand? But I think I'm kind of a bit of both, really. We all are, actually. We've all got bits of both. They're just personality traits, aren't they? I mean, the organs indicate something, but anyway, blah, blah. Okay. Okay. So all the monks and nuns living in the fullness of the vows, they are the actual the relative spiritual community. In fact, the Buddha would say that the presence in any one place of at least, what is it, four of them is the criterion of the existence of the living Dharma in that place. There's always a story I tell. The story in Tibet at some point there was some naughty king who didn't like all the Dharma and tried to kill off all the monks. They never had fully ordained nuns in Tibet. I don't know why. Same as in Taiwan, they never got fully ordained. Japan has them. China has them. And now there's full ordination for nuns now coming from those lineages, but it never got into Tibet. Don't know why. Well, probably because patriarchal, weren't they? That's right. It's all the boys running the show, you know, same everywhere. It's all right. I've been a boy many times. I'm allowed to criticize. Anyway, the some point in Tibet, when this naughty king, they were desperate to keep the quota. They needed at least 10 people for an ordination. So they were desperate to keep the Dharma to be alive in Tibet, which is embodied in these beings. Dharma doesn't exist in a book, you know. It's got to be living. It's got to be living knowledge. So a lovely word in Tibetan, knowledge holder. Ridsin, knowledge holder. It's a very nice meaning. Got to have living knowledge holders. Otherwise, what you're learning, even cakes, is dead. It's a myth if you don't have it living in the minds of beings. It's got a great meaning. So there's 4 fully ordained monks or nuns, or monks in this case in Tibet. They were running out of monks for their quota. So they snuck over the border, some Chinese dude, a monk. And they must have worn blue because out of respect, this blue thing here we wear on our robes is kind of in gratitude to that monk. That's the story I've heard. So the relative Buddha Dharma Sangha, the absolute Buddha is the all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-pervasive mind, enlightened mind. The absolute Dharma is the knowledge of the Dharma in that mind, and the relative Sangha, the absolute Sangha, are all those superior beings, anything from some person's realized emptiness up to the Buddha. The relative Buddha is the shape and form we see. Shakyamuni, whose teachings in the books are the expression of his knowledge in the books and the CDs and so on. And then the spiritual community, the monks and nuns. But more broadly, this is not wrong to say this is our Sangha, of course it is. So that's Buddha Dhamma Sangha, just roughly. So when a person formally decides they'd like to commit to being a Buddhist, to label themselves a Buddhist, if you like, to start practicing formally, you know. I mean, we're creatures of form and habit. We need sort of, you know, we like structure. It's good to have a structure, I think. So here is today in this place in Kungaling in Deerfield Beach in Florida on the 1st of May. we're going to do this little ceremony with this person sitting in this chair, you know, representing the Buddha. It's the best you can get. I'm sorry. Buddha died 2,500 years ago. I'm the best you can get right here now. What to do. So, but if you think about it, that I got this from my Lama, who got it from their teacher, who got it from their teacher. And I like this idea very much. It's like a power source of real living humans, unbroken chain of them all the way back to the Buddha. That, for me, is very tasty. So hopefully the power of Buddha can come through, you know. We do this little ceremony together today for those who want to renew their refuge and thus purify broken commitments and renew their lay vows, thus purify broken vows, and those who'd like to do it for the first time. We can do together. So when you take refuge formally, there's various commitments. We're sort of like shaking hands, and we, you know, and you kind of got making an agreement with the Buddha. You're kind of signing a contract, like the Scientologists. They sign contracts and they promise, what is it? They'll be for 1 billion years. I think that Mr. Hubbard must have been a Buddhist in some past life. He lost the plot on the way, I think. Really, there's many things you read the Scientologists. Quite interesting. There's a lot of stuff in there that I think he got from being a Buddhist in past lives, like Hitler. That sounds shocking, but look at Hitler. Aryan. Where do you think it got from? What do you think the swastika came from? He obviously was very familiar with kind of the Indian spirituality, but he kind of lost the plot, clearly lost the plot in past lives for sure. But he used those symbols. So I think Mr. Hubbard was a bit like that, but kind of made it wacky, in my opinion, just suggesting possibly. Don't want to be rude to Mr. Cruz or anybody else. But many of the ideas are very similar to the Buddhist ideas. You know, it's very curious. Anyway, that's just my view. Okay. So anyway, like the Scientology, we're sort of like signing a contract with the Buddha, but it's not that contract. Sort of we're signing a contract, we're agreeing. We're kind of shaking hands and agreeing. You know, that Buddha will do his job. It's kind of through me. I'll promise you that I'll do my job to do my best to support you in your spiritual practice, because we're going to make this good connection together. And then you promise you'll do your job, which is, you know, you'll agree to do half a dozen things. So one thing you're agreeing to do when you do this, and this is for our benefit, we need agreement because we're all bone lazy. We need to have an agreement. We need to sort of commit ourselves to doing something. Otherwise, we know how lazy we are. We're not disciplined, you know. So it's good to have an agreement. I like this idea of commitments and vows, because I need to be kind of encouraged, you know, for myself when I take my vows and my commitments. So you're committing to take refuge every day, which means this little prayer, even if you say 3 times in the morning, I take refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. I take refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. 3 times. That's it. You kept commitment. So because we're on the Mahayana path, you can add a second 2 lines, which is the bodhicitta one, which is from the Mahayana component. So that I can be of benefit sentient beings, I'm going to, you know, blah, 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 like that. So 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night. It's a reminder. It's helpful. Second, you're committing to make offerings to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So this offerings one is it's a massive, incredible, powerful, amazing practice for one's own benefit. Often, we talked about this, often when we think about offering to somebody, being generous, it's usually to a person who needs it. So in other words, if there's a person who's quite rich, I don't think you'd think to give them $1. You'd be sort of silly. They don't need $1. But that's not the point, you see. It is marvelous to give $1 because the meaning is from you wanting to give something. So the real beneficiary of giving, apart from the homeless person who gets the $1, who definitely does appreciate $1, but not these days $1. That's back in the 1920s. I think 5 or 10 minimum, 20 minimum, please. And I'm serious. We don't even like to give, you know, we give a coin still for a homeless person. I mean, most people in this country, what is it, $9? The federal government says is the basic wage. Isn't it still $9? Federal government, isn't it? Is that right? I know it is. It's $9. I mean, even $25 you can't live on in this country now. Out of interest. Never mind, I'm going off on the wrong track now. But giving is a practice we need. It's a practice we need. In the Bodhisattva path, the first of the 6 perfections is the practice of generosity. It's an unbelievably powerful practice. It's incredibly powerful practice. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, don't think of receiving, think of giving. It transforms the mind. It's a courageous attitude. Most of us most of us are miserly. We don't like to think we are. It sounds shocking to say that we're miserly. But we're afraid of giving because we will think, if I give $1, that means I've got $1 less. And that seems logical. But what we don't understand is any dollar we have, any access to 1 grain of rice, anything that happens in our life, we get food easily, we have a house, we can get a mortgage. Don't just think you're being lucky. Don't think because I've worked hard, I've got that. No. Lots of people work 60 hours a week and still have nothing. It's because of your past generosity. Giving is a miraculous practice that enables receiving from past lives. Why we receive anything in this life, why we're born in a country where we can get a reasonable, even if it's $9 an hour, is because of past giving. But giving has got a powerful psychological benefit. It opens us up, it makes courageous. And when we start to see sentient beings in terms of what can I give, what do they need, not only the ones we're attached to, we'll give a fortune to our attachment objects. We love to give to our attachment objects. They're the only ones we give to because we've got a vested interest in it, because we get something in return, which is their love and adoration. So giving is an incredible practice. As Lama Zopa says, to get a human body in the first place, next life, you've got to have non-killing karma, practice in the framework of living in vows of not killing, as we've discussed. But to have be born in a place where you've got things, to have the miracle of leisure, because you've got enough money in the bank and get access and have jobs or a rich wife or friends or a neighbor or support and a house and a mortgage. All these things are not just because you've worked hard and not because you're lucky. They're from your past generosity. And what's the point of all that? So you have the leisure to practice. If we don't use the results of our generosity, if we use the results of our generosity to sit on our laurels and enjoy them, it's just attachment. So when we die, it'll all run out. If we even do get a human body, we'll be born totally poor again. You work 18 hours a day for a bowl of rice. Giving is an unbelievably powerful practice for one's own benefit. Don't think of receiving, think of giving. We are the beneficiary. Do not underestimate that. Of course, it becomes genuine compassion eventually, but never discount the benefit to you. That's not selfish, it's intelligent. So a marvelous way to give, a powerful way to give, is to give to every morning have a practice of giving. A practice when you wake up, you take your refuge, you go to your little altar, we'll discuss this now, and when you make your offerings on the altar. Of course, this sounds really like a ritual as far as we're concerned. What on earth does a Buddha statue want with a bunch of offerings, you think, That's not the point. We need to make offerings. We need to create the karma of generosity. It's the first level of being able to benefit sentient beings because it makes you courageous. You're training yourself and thinking, how can I help? By giving. It's huge practice. So giving to the three jewels during one of our first practices in the morning, once we've taken refuge, once you get out of bed, So the first thing, this is just jumping now to make me setting up a practice, okay? I'll divert from the commitments for a second. So a really good way, a formal way to implement a practice every day containing these components, the discipline of this is the first thing you wake up. First thing to do one example will be the first thing to do when you wake up. You think, wow, I'm still alive. I can't believe it. First one. We take it for granted, don't we? No, your petrol tank of non-killing hasn't run out yet. You're not dead yet. You didn't die last night. You didn't die during the night, like a miracle. We just think, of course I'm alive. I'm me, grasping at permanent me. No, be blown out. I'm not dead yet. So then conclude, I'm going to make the most of today. You can take your refuge prayer then. You can do a mantra then. You can remind yourself then, I'm going to do the best I can to help others, whatever you want. Then you hop out. That's your first thoughts. In your first speech, like a mantra or your prayer, then you hop out of bed, you do 3 prostrations. So the first action of mind, body, and speech. Mind, speech, and body. You start the day in the right direction. But you're not committed to do this. It's just a suggestion, Then you go to the toilet to clean yourself up and you go straight to your room where you have your altar, your images of the Buddha, because we need these to remind us of what we are going to become. The statue of the Buddha, the teacher, the picture of your Lama on your altar. An altar is like a surface, and you make it beautiful. If it's like ugly and stuck in a corner with things on top of it, you're not going to feel happy. So have your room, if you've got enough real estate, have an entire room for your practice, your shrine room. Common for Tibetans, even the ones who can afford the real estate, they have an entire room and they dedicate it to the Dalai Lama, just in case he comes. Have a bed for him, have an altar, all beautiful. It's the Dalai Lama's room, you know. It's very amazing, that. Very special. So you have a special room, if you can, if not a special corner of your room, where you have your altar. And because we're creatures of the five senses, it reminds you when you see it. It reminds you, okay, that's what I'm trying to become. So you'd have your altar, you do your offerings. You do 3 prostrations, and you do your offerings. So this offerings is one we see here with the water bowls. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, 8 or something. They look a bit crooked. They should be straight. Who does your water bowls? Who did them? Lou. Not today. They're nice, good size. Lama Zopa in Lama Zopa's house in Aptos in California, until it burned down, he had an entire room for his practice. I'm sure his little nuns were so happy because they spent 8 hours a day, every day, doing water bowls. And he's got bowls this big, you know. And they have buckets. The nuns kind of got hurt muscles from carrying these big bowls. One day, Rinpoche found just a slight kind of bit of hair in one. So they had to empty all the bowls and do it all again, because you've got to offer something pure to the Buddha. Anyway, you have your water bowls. And so it's a marvelous little tradition. It's from Tantra. And it's from the tradition of India, where you'd have a visitor. So you greet your visitor, you'd offer them. The first offering is, okay, what happened was you do these usually on your altar. But then when they got to Tibet, a teacher, he was very kind of low key, you know, and all this is from the Vajrayana. He said because you get very attached to your own offerings. The water in Tibet was so pure. Let's use water instead, and you visualize. So these represent the 8 sense offerings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like 8, yeah. So, okay. So the first one represents nectar for drinking. So you greet your guests, please have a drink. Then you'd offer water for washing their feet. How sweet. You know, you'd wash their feet. Then you'd offer them flower garlands. Third one is that, flowers. Fourth one, you offer incense. You put the incense on, make it all nice. Fifth one is, look at lights. It must be getting darker by now. So you turn the lights on. I think it was a nice party, you know. The next, getting a bit sexy now, I always think this. The next one is perfume. You offer perfume. Then you offer the dinner, and then out come the dancing girls. The 8th one, music. I think of it like that, okay? So you offer each of these, and you're imagining them as big as the universe. I mean, Lama Zopa gives extensive teachings about that. The bigger, the better. And you bless it with Om Mahung, the enlightened energy, body, speech, and mind, and you imagine these offerings, beautiful. This is the most brilliant practice you can do. I mean, this is what we have to think about, because on the face of it, it just looks like ridiculous, you know. I mean, we Catholics know about this. You go to the church and you offer a light, at least a light, don't you? All the lights there. We've got to understand the logic of the benefit to yourself, of imagining beautiful offerings, of imagining what to offer. I mean, if every thought you have turns you into the person you become, then it is clear the benefit to you. We want to become generous people. We want to be open and generous and big and optimistic. Well, even if you don't like giving money to people because you're nervous about not having enough, start with this practice and it'll make you generous, I promise. It'll loosen the grip of the fear of not having. Because every thought you have produces the person you become. So sincerely imagining, and this is why if you have a Lama, a spiritual mentor, I like that word a lot now. I saw the definition of it. The best term in English, I think. Lama sounds weird to us, but I like to use that word. Guru is the Indian equivalent. Heavy with qualities, I've heard that it means. And Lama, Ma, curiously in Tibetan, this really shows the universality of these words. Ma and Pa are the endings for male and female in Tibetan. Isn't that interesting? Ma and Pa, you know? So Lama, it's not a male word, it's not a female word, but this is a term that's equivalent of the word guru. So Lama Yeshe, knowing how all feminists we are, he'd say it means high mother. Lama means high mother. I think that's cute. So spiritual mentor is a really good word. I always forget the definition. I'll look it up and I'll tell you. I like it. Hang on, I'll tell you. Oh, this is a non-Mac. I don't know how to do these things. Oh, this is too peculiar. I don't know how to do it. Look up definition, please, of mentor. Don't worry. Now I've lost the people again. Attendee. I've lost the people again.
We
Wait
are
a minute.
still here.
I can't do it. Oh, here we are. Okay, all good. What's the definition?
A spiritual mentoring.
No, mentor. The definition of mentor.
Just mentor.
Yeah, it's a lovely definition.
An experienced and trusted advisor.
An experienced and trusted advisor. Do we not want someone like that? So here, of course, it's a spiritual mentor. That's a great definition. That's exactly the definition of a guru or a lama, you know. An experienced and what?
Trusted.
Trusted. That's nice. I think that's great. We all need one of them, I promise. So if you have one of them, you've decided, then the practice is on your statue, your statue of Buddha on the altar, you think that your mentor, your spiritual mentor, is manifesting as the Buddha. But the Buddha is your spiritual mentor, mind, and their mind is the Buddha. They're the same. That makes it personal for you. It helps that. Otherwise, it's this abstract Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago, you know. As Lama Yeshe said, the Buddha is dead. So the Four Noble Truths will only become real for you when you hear it from the mouth of the person in front of you. And I think this is really logical. My mother, I always repeat this, my mother was a musician. She taught me music. She taught me Bach. Now, Bach's dead. How can I rely upon these ancient pieces of paper that he wrote 500 years ago and try and extract the essence from that music? Very, very difficult, I'm sorry. I need a living person in front of me who has perfected Bach. This is so logical. We need this. That's the meaning of a spiritual teacher. We need that person badly. They're right in front of us. As Lama Yeshe says, we're dying for love, you know. So choose a person whom you can trust. And as Prabhupada Rinpoche says, choose your guru very carefully. You're going to end up like them. I love that. So my first teacher was Lama Yeshe when I chose him. You know. Then the hard work starts. Because you've given them permission. I like to think of it that way. When I chose Lama Yeshe, I thought about him. I met him first, came back a year later, and then I committed. And I always say this, you're supposed to ask, you know, very polite. I didn't know that. I was so proud. I informed him he was my teacher. Yes, I know, he said. I was so arrogant. I didn't know supposed to know. You're supposed to prostrate 3 times, make an offering, look humble. I didn't do that. Anyway, basically, and I find this very powerful too. Basically, I gave Lama Yeshe permission, didn't I, to teach me. Teach me what? About my mind. Show me my mind. That's their job. That's their expertise, to show me my mind, which means to show me my shitty bits, to point out in their behavior or even the advice they give, to help me see my anger, my delusions, my pride, my arrogance. Why? Because they're causing me suffering and one wants to work on them. So the job of a Lama is to show you your mind. Very powerful. So I gave Lama Yeshe permission, basically. And the hard work starts, because you will do exactly what you give them permission to do. At my very first meeting with Lama, I'd done this book. I'd met him for the first time the year before, and then I got back to Melbourne, and I like to do things, and we had a printing company, so I decided I'd do a new version of this book that was the course notes called The Wish-Fulfilling Golden Sun. So I retyped it, redesigned it, got our printing company to print it, packed up 500 books and brought them back up to when I met Lama again the next year. And I presented, and I felt very proud of doing all this work, you know. And I presented to Lama. And he said, thank you for helping my nun. And his nun, what he meant was, there was a nun in Melbourne at the centre there. And I thought, but she didn't do anything about this book. It was my idea. I did it. I did the book. I decided. I carried them and I presented it. And he said, thank you for helping my nun. That was my first teaching. I thought, excuse me. She helped me. I didn't say it, of course. My first thought was, excuse me, she helped me. The idea that thank you for helping my nun was a very weird idea for me, you know. Do you understand me? I mean, they talk about the bodhisattvas who go from behind and shepherd all the people to enlightenment. They always go behind. And then the ones who lead. I don't want to be a shepherd, thank you. I want to lead. Do you understand? I'm unashamed about it. Or even when I heard about a Buddha's got to be humble, it made me very nervous. I mean, of course I've got to be humble. I thought I want to be the biggest, fattest, loudest Buddha possible. Then I felt a lot better. I mean, get my point, please. You know, of course I have to be humble, for God's sake. Anyway, Lama Yeshe. I chose Lama Yeshe. You've got to remember this. Repeatedly, you have to remember this. The worst thing when we hear about a guru is like someone sitting on top of you, forcing you to do things. There's this cliched idea we have. It's the most bizarre concept you could have. You choose the person you want to lead you to enlightenment. And you choose on the basis of using your noggin, using your intelligence. I'd been to his classes, I checked up, really checked carefully. Went back home to Melbourne, thought about it for a year, penny dropped, it became clear, And then even with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's Lama Yeshe's disciple, in my first retreat, retreat, I had a vivid dream in which I was at this place in India, and we go there on our pilgrimage again. I keep popping in commercials. We go into this place called Nalanda Monastery. Amazing place in India, incredible, near Vulture's Peak, where Buddha taught the Heart Sutra and everything. And it was this vast place where they unearthed, where there used to be, there's a huge place of learning, incredible place. So I remember in the dream, I was there with a whole bunch of students, and Lama Zopa was there. And he called me out. And he put his text, they have these long folio text wrapped in cloth. And he put a text over one shoulder, his robe over my other shoulder, and he said to follow him out. It was a nice dream. And I happened to tell a Lama I knew in Dharamsala about the dream. He said, that's the Lama who leads you to enlightenment. Well, I was very surprised. As far as I was concerned, Lama Yeshe was my Lama, So I knew he was also my Lama. But this is what's interesting. It took me 10 years to recognize. So until then, he left me alone, because I hadn't given him permission. Think of it like that. And 10 years of hard work, realizing he was my Lama, but wasn't ready yet. And then when Lama Yeshe passed away, and then at some point, I mentioned this yesterday, during a retreat in New Zealand with Lama Zopa, 10 years after Lama Yeshe passed away, 5 years after Lama passed away, but 10 years after my first retreat, or something like that, this dream, it must have been the penny finally dropped. After the retreat, which they called me up to his room, and I just finished my job, editing Wisdom Publications for 10 years, the editorial director, and my job was finished. And I didn't know what to do next. And Lama wasn't there. And I'd been thinking about Lama Zopa being my teacher for 10 years. And then finally, the penny dropped. And this is what I said. Yes, remember I said? It was like he told me, like that picture of, Michelangelo and God's finger, that big one. It was like that for me. Lama Zopa said, he didn't really not like this, but I think of it that way. Go to Sydney and teach, he said. That's when he became my teacher. Then he started pushing me around, because I gave him permission. But it took me 10 years to recognize. That's an interesting point, isn't it? You've got to be ready, So anyway, you make your offerings on the altar. Then you might have your Buddha statue. You have your picture of your Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, His Holiness, whoever you want. And you make offerings. So it's a really powerful practice for your mind. As if your Lama were there. Now, one of our biggest problems is we're all lazy. And you do your offerings for a while. And then you're like a friend of mine in New York. And suddenly, he did his offerings every day for a year. And suddenly, I went and visited his room, and there were his water bowls, his lovely silver water bowls, all moldy, totally empty. He hadn't done it for weeks, months, in fact. They were sitting there empty, moldy. Would you put an empty cup in front of even your dog? I don't think so. And you wouldn't put a moldy cup in front of your dog either. But they're on the altar, his moldy bowls offering to your guru. So my thing is, I think, and it's become a practice now, to make myself do my offerings every day because I want to, is I get up in the morning, there's a knock on the door, and it's Lama Zopa. Will I bring him in and sit him down and then go get my own breakfast? I don't think so. Who's that person? Come on in. Who are you? That's Bryce. Yeah. You're Bryce, aren't you? Yeah, I bet you. Come on in. You missed already 1 hour of it. Yeah, honey, child, never mind. Don't make an excuse. Sit down. Relax. Such as Bryce. We bumped into each other in a cafe last week, didn't we? But Bryce, I can't see you there. Come over here. Come over here, darling. I want to look at you. We bumped into each other in a cafe. He said he rang the centre and they said there were no in-person teachings. I know, Nicole. There's the director. It's her fault, Bryce. She didn't do the phone message. Anyway. So, Bryce, what we're talking about, it's like the end of the weeks of teachings we've had. We're talking about this, what it means for a Buddhist to take refuge, to formally commit themselves to becoming a Buddhist. So that's what we're discussing here for some people. So you're very welcome, okay? Happy to see you. Okay. Okay. So So you make your offerings. And so I always think, if the Lama's open, knocking on the door, do you think I'd just sit him down and have my own coffee? I don't think so. Think about this. It's a perfect method. You rush off to do your offerings immediately before you put one drop of water in your mouth, or even before you feed your pussycat. It's a really marvelous practice to start in the morning. It reminds you of what you're trying to become. And because it's a practice of offerings, it's very rich for the mind, very delicious for the mind, you know. Now, that's your commitment. You're committing when you formally take refuge, like we're going to do today. You're committing to take refuge morning and night. You're committing to make offerings. So this is a marvelous practice, and it sets you off. And you're not committing to do more. You don't have to sit down on your bum and do anything. But if you want to, you can do a formal practice. But you've ticked your boxes already there. You're committing to those. You're also committing to being nice to sentient beings. Please don't harm, you know. You're committing to sort of study a little bit of the Dharma. So obviously, if you commit to go play tennis, you don't not go to play tennis, do you? So you commit to do something every day. You also commit to offer your first mouthful of your food and your tea and your food, because it's a really good practice to remind us, because we're also attached to food, isn't it? So it's a really good practice to help us give up attachment to food, to remind first before you shove it in the mouth. Think of the Buddha receiving it, you know. It's a very nice practice. And then you committed roughly, there's half a dozen things there, 4 things maybe. But then in relation to the images that represent Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you're committed to have kind of what they call pure view. You see the image of the Buddha. You don't just have it there because it's fancy or it's expensive. You see it as a manifestation of the Buddha, showing you what you can become, you know. And you don't have your green Tara on that wall because it matches your green curtains. Not like that. You try and see it as a representation of what you're trying to achieve. You have kind of a pure view towards it. And all your books, you know, because they're like your medicine in that book, your methods, the Buddha's teachings that you agreed to apply, you want to apply in your daily life, you always have them up high. It's very meaningful. So the images of the Buddha you put in a nice place, like as if you had pictures of your family. You wouldn't just chuck it in a drawer, because you honor it. It reminds you of something. So the same with the images and the teachings. You put your books in a beautiful place because they're meaningful for you. They contain your practices, and then you try to have respectful view towards anybody who is representing, you know, the Sangha. Some things like that. So that's refuge, roughly speaking. So now ask me some questions, please. And you need to have questions if you want to do it, because I want you to be super clear what you're doing, you know. Yeah. Go. Yes, yeah.
What if I can't have like
a bit louder, darling? You've got to. This mic is not so good.
What if I can't have an actual altar?
Because you're living. Because the person. Yeah, you keep it private. Then you just have to. If you can't have. I mean, where you practice is where your family are, right? And you don't want to upset them. That's the point, isn't it?
Correct.
So you have a little secret one you can bring out and then pop back in again. No.
I guess, yeah, I was even asked to get rid of my books, but
what?
Yeah.
Your wife wants you to get rid of your books.
I've got his books now.
Oh, okay.
A few books.
And she doesn't. But you should keep those hidden from her. Don't want to upset your wife, so you should hide them.
She's okay with the books.
Oh, she's okay with books, but an image is a bit much.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, maybe you have to have a book that's got a picture of the Buddha, and when you do your practice, you open it up and you put a little light there or a flower, and then you close it and snuck it back in on the shelf. You don't want to upset your wife.
Okay. And is a mandala offering a good?
Yeah, if you don't do the water bottles, it's fine. But it's really nice to do them, but in your mind. It's a very nice offering. It's because it's the protocol, it's the tradition of our teachers. So it's nice to keep those going. It's really nice to think of it. You know, you say the same in the Sanskrit words, learn them. Oh, ma ga ma honga ma honga ma honga paja ma honga ma honga ma honga. You do them. Imagine blessing, imagine offering in your mind. It's marvelous to do that, Jack. It's nice to do that. Keep it all secret. Don't upset your wife. Okay. What else, people? Yes. Anybody else? On Zoom, any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, go.
Is there an ideal?
Use the mic, darling.
Is there an ideal, or how often you should renew your vows?
Well, that's where if you do the purification practice every day, like we talked, at the end of the day, at the 4th step, resolve, you do it right there. I will never kill. I will never lie. I will never steal. And we'll go to the vows in a minute. So you do it there best. That's how you integrate it into your daily practice. But to do it formally like this, you don't need to do that, but it's helpful to do that if there's a person you know you're connected to and a teacher you like and they're going to do it. It's a nice thing. Some people today are going to do that, going to renew. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's very helpful.
So you'll be back in 1 year to renew again?
Oh, I see. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe other teachers are coming too that you like, you know. So, well, yeah. So let's. Anybody? Any questions?
Yes.
Where are you? Yes, darling. Go.
If and when
Closer to the mic.
If or when I may fall short of maintaining my vows, is my daily Raja stuff practice.
I understand. I'm going to discuss the vows now. We're discussing refuge first. Now I'll go into the vows. Okay. It's the same thing. You know, they talk about a commitment is a decision to do something, and a vow is a decision to refrain from something. So here we're discussing these little commitments once you've taken refuge. But you do those few things that I said. And that once you tick your boxes in your head and you know you've done those, then it's nice to know you've kept your commitments. And that's enough for your practice. You don't need to do more. You can do more, but that's just your commitments. So now we'll talk about the vows. Anybody else? Yes, sweetheart, go over here. Thank you. Yeah.
You mentioned about asking to have acceptance to be
A bit louder, close to the mic.
You mentioned about having acceptance.
Close.
to be
I'm really
teacher.
forgive me, but you ought to be closer to the mic for the people on the Zoom.
Can I hear now?
Can you hear people? It's hard for them. Go on.
Now?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about requesting or asking to be
A person to be your teacher.
right?
Yes.
So what would you suggest for people, in our position? How do we ask?
Well, I mean, if the person isn't where you're living, you ask to make an appointment and go, or if you email. That's how we communicate these days, isn't it? Like that.
Okay, so what are the steps? Not the steps. What would be like?
Well, I mean, if you're going to,
like a month from now, if we're have a question, or
well, okay. I mean, yeah, it's like it depends on who the person is. I mean, Nalanda Monastery has thousands of students, and people write letters, and you've got a folder at any given time of 2,000 letters, and you might wait 2 years for a reply. But even a friend of mine who had cancer, she wrote and he got a letter in 2 years, but it was the perfect timing. I mean, or on the other hand, Rinpoche might get a letter from some guy in prison, because I mean, I've worked with people in prison, remember? And many of these guys wrote, and we did that book. Rinpoche asked me to put together his hundreds of letters to prisoners who'd written to him. And one fellow, Rinpoche wrote a 45-page letter to him. There's 2,000 letters in his folder, but he figured this is the guy's most important. So he wrote a 45-page letter. So it depends on who your teacher is. Rinpoche gets emails, or he's got one attendant who gets all his emails, and they go to Lama Zopa. And then other people mightn't have that many students, and so they will answer their own emails. It depends on the person. Some people don't ask questions because, I can count in the 45 years I've been a Buddhist the number of meetings I've had with Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa on two hands. Because they give the teachings, I hear the teachings, I try to put them into practice. So no, but absolutely, you have a relationship with your teacher, you ask questions. Absolutely. Absolutely. And usually these days it would be email or something. Do you understand? That makes sense. That answers your question. Yeah. Okay. But the other thing that's important, and this is something, again, pretty abstract for us in our culture. When you do your practices every day, let's say you start developing a practice, and you do your little practice in the morning, you take refuge, you do all these things. But let's just say you like to do, you start getting some practices, like say a visualization practice of the Buddha. The real benefit comes in your teachings from your own practice. When you do that visualization of Tara or Chenrezig or Shakyamuni, the Buddhas, and when you see them as your teacher, by doing that, you're connecting with your own teacher in your heart. And you somehow, it enables you to kind of get understanding and the realizations to come and the understanding to come. So you don't often have to ask questions. But you hear that if all the teachings are there, they've got all the answers, by listening, by thinking, by analyzing it, and then you do your practice every day, the penny drops. You get the blessings. Do you understand? And you develop this close relationship in your mind. Do you understand that? Yeah. What else, people? So let's talk about the vows then. This is the second part. And you don't have to take the vows. The first one is the refuge one. Many lamas, when they give refuge, won't do the vows in the same ceremony. You wait for another year. But I'll be offering them. Those who'd like, very welcome. So the vows are, we discussed this. Let's talk about karma again. We need to talk about karma again because the vows are related to that. We've done this several times throughout the week, including yesterday and Friday. Let's do it again, just roughly. The fundamental, the natural law, this is how Buddha talks. He's not a creator. He didn't invent this concept of karma. the law of cause and effect. He's not a creator. He didn't invent it. He didn't create it. He's not shoving it down our throats. He's observed it to be true. And that's pretty cosmic for us, because we don't think that's a possibility in our neuroscientific views and our psychological views. We think the mind is the brain. We have a brain, not a problem. But it's not the Buddha's view of what the mind is. The mind is not physical. The mind goes back and back in past lives and goes further in future lives. It's a continuity of mental moments. It's a radically different view. This is the Buddha's observation. And the law that runs our minds, as we've been talking, is that every millisecond of what we think and do and say programs us. Buddha would have liked that phrase. Sows seeds in our mind that will ripen in the future in our own mind as our own future experiences. It's a pretty cosmic concept, but that's the view of karma. And of course, in the minds of Indians back in 3,000 years ago, when this view first became apparent, and then the Buddha and Tibet and the Asian countries, this is the view that they take as a given. Like we take the materialist view as a given, we take the Christian views as a given, or whatever. There's no concept in Buddhism of a creator. We don't need creating. We create ourselves, life after life after life. That's the meaning of karma, broadly. Such that everything we think and do and say produces the person we become. So given that we want happiness and don't want suffering, then we better produce it. So the very first level of practice that we've been talking is you refrain from doing the actions of harming others, which are the actions driven by attachment or anger or neurosis that would sow seeds in our mind that will produce my future suffering. Thank you. I don't want future suffering. So then Buddha says, okay, honey, don't cause it. So if you don't want future suffering, don't kill. This is the fundamentals. There's a list of 10 don'ts that is first recommendation. Not forcing it upon us, but a recommendation that this is the first level of practice. At least you don't kill any sentient being. So what's killing? What drives it? Anger, aversion. How disgusting. How dare a mouse be in my kitchen? How dare a cockroach be in my kitchen? Or attachment. Or a delicious fish. I'll eat it. They're the actions that we do to harm others that are driven by attachment and anger, like we've been talking all week. So who wants to program that in their mind? Who wants to have a tendency for anger and attachment and to harm others? Who wants that? Forget the harm you do to others. The whole point about karma is it produces us. We don't have that view in our culture. We think if no one sees us do something naughty, we get away with it. Or we think of something naughty as being something you get punished for. There's no concept like that in Buddhism. There's no punisher. There's no rewarder. Very powerful idea. So the Buddha would suggest, for our own sake, we don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't badmouth, don't harm, don't harm sentient beings. And at this first level of practice, you are the beneficiary of this, because you're programming your mind in not harming others. That means you're programming your mind to sow seeds in your mind that will produce your future happiness. You won't get killed, you won't die young, you won't get hurt. It's a very odd concept for us, but this is the Buddha's view. We take that as our working hypothesis. So the vows are 5 of these 10, and you take them as a vow. And as we discussed yesterday, a vow is super powerful psychologically. The Buddha's view is that. If you commit, we're going to do that in the ceremony. You'll be on your knee, you repeat 3 times, I will never kill. From this moment until the time of my death, I will never kill. And the Buddha's saying that programs your mind very powerfully. And it's illogical, it does. Once you've taken a vow not to kill, every second of the day, you're aware you've got that in your mind stream, and you won't want to harm sentient beings. It guides you. It's really logical psychologically. And look at the world, Most people kill something. Many people lie, steal, harm, but we don't think it matters. If you don't get caught, it doesn't matter. There's no view like that in Buddhism. It's like I said, it's like going to your doctor and she says, don't smoke. Why not? Or you'll get cancer. And then you go home and there's no doctor there. Oh, I won't get cancer. She doesn't see me smoke, so I'll smoke, and out come the Marlboros. I don't think so. Morality is a natural law. What you do and say and think produces you. That's the essence of karma. So it demands that we take responsibility. We own responsibility. We own our own rubbish and we own our own goodness, because we are the one who produces the person we become. It's in our hands. Don't blame the external world. Become a victim. I didn't ask to get born. That's how we think. I didn't ask to get born. Not my fault. Buddha says, you created yourself, honey. You came into your mother's womb at the first second of conception, programmed with your own tendencies, programmed with your own experiences. So in this way, with karma, you own your bad experiences and you own your good experiences. We become the boss. It's a very powerful concept. That's what's behind the concept of karma. Of course, you have to learn the details, not just kind of hippy-trippy, you know. So the vows are like, you vow not to kill. So what that means is you're going to vow not to kill a human. The first one is not kill a human being. But also you're going to vow, this is hard for us modern people, not to kill any being. When the Dalai Lama gives these vows in big crowds of people, like thousands of people, like modern people, you know, he only gives it as not killing humans because he knows most modern people, the thought of not killing a cockroach is too difficult for us. Do you understand? So at least we have the vow not to kill humans, but I can't change the vow. I have to give it the way the Buddha gave it, which is not kill any living being. And not to be worried about that. Sort of somehow have a strong intention. Vow is a decision. I'm going to do my best not to harm any living being. If you meet a cockroach, try not to harm it. It's not too difficult, actually. Definitely don't kill humans. And you try your best not to kill the rats, the cockroaches, the ex-boyfriend. Well, that's the human, isn't it? You understand? And again, see the benefit of programming your mind in non-harming. It's a pretty delicious thing. You know? You're the beneficiary of that. And it programs you. So therefore, one of the consequences of living in a vow not to kill or renewing it every day is that it prevents you from meeting a condition in which you feel you'll be forced to kill. I can tell you with certainty, these 45 years, I'm not trying to show up, I'm just telling you that I've been a Buddhist, doing my best to put my money where my mouth is. I've never yet met in a condition in which I feel I've been forced to kill. Even living in India, which is like Jurassic Park in the rainy season. Do you understand? Well, I mean, I remember one time at one hotel in Varanasi, it was like Hitchcock and birds, these massive creatures smashing up against the glass door, you know. I mean, the number of creatures you meet, I'm sure it's much worse than Florida. But if you're really conscious and don't want to harm, you really begin to develop some kind of awareness, and you really do not want to harm. It's difficult to be bombarded by all these creatures. But we're just lazy mostly. Oh, I'm so compassionate until it comes to 3 moths. 3's too many. I have to kill them. You understand? Like I told you about my friend in retreat, had all these moths. Her house was bombarded by moths. She spent weeks and weeks catching a little moth, blowing a mantra on it, and releasing it. That's incredible practice, you know. We don't have that much compassion. We're happy to save one ant, one cockroach, but a whole lot. Too much, you know. So it's a powerful practice, really. And it's obvious the cockroaches will be happy because you leave them in peace. But this is the point about vows. Look at the benefit to yourself. You're programming your mind to become a non-harming person. On this planet, how incredible. Not just training yourself to be a nice girl because people will praise you. It's the method for you to become a happy human being. That's the point about it, you know. It's a method for you to become a non-harming, conscious, aware, kinder, happier human being. Think of it like that. So then it's very delicious thinking this way. Not just you don't kill because you're going to get punished, you know. Or to be a good girl. Not like that. It's a very powerful practice. So don't kill. You break in a major way if you consciously kill a human being. Now, to break a vow, you've got to know it's a vow, don't care, intend to do it, and have no interest in fixing it. So it's rare that you'd break a vow like this. Do you understand my point? So if you break in a major way, you've got to take it again in the presence of somebody like this. If you break in a minor way, you just purify every day. That's why the 4 opponent powers, the purification practice is so powerful. You vow not to, what's the next one? The body, killing. Another one with the body is the Tibetans call stealing, is take the ungiven. You vow not to take the ungiven. It's a very direct translation of stealing, isn't it? And that's a really good practice. We're a bit cheap and mean. If we get something for free, we're very happy, you know. So on the computers, look at computers, press a button, you get a movie. So it's a really good practice to want not to take what hasn't been offered to you. It's a very good practice. It makes you very aware. If you break in a major way, if you take something of value to somebody else. Like if you steal $20 from a homeless person, I think that's of value to somebody else. You break in a major way, you've got to take the vow again. You cut at the root. You break in a minor way, if you take anything that hasn't been given. It's a really good practice. It's a really good practice. It makes you conscious. Because we're sort of greedy, and we get something for free, we'll grab it, you know. It was very funny in Russia, when I was there a lot of Buddhists in Russia, in Moscow, back in early 2000s. There they don't pay taxes because they don't trust their government, and so they lie and they steal. So there's this big discussion in the Buddhist center about whether they should take the vow of lying and stealing. So when we did the vows, there was complete silence when it came to lying and stealing. So they didn't want to lie because they knew they're not paying taxes, they're lying and stealing, you know. The third one is of the body is what we call it sexual misconduct, which basically means don't jump on the wrong partner, don't steal someone else's partner, and don't cheat on your own. We can see the pain and suffering that this causes, you know. There's more intricate things in the text, but that's the general thing of the view of the vow that you're taking when I give it. Don't cheat on your partners. Don't take other people's partners. And you break it just by doing it, you know. So then, I don't think it's a major vow. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I have to look it up. I'll have to let you know before you cheat on your partner. I'll let you know. Now, the thing is, if you don't have a partner, it's not saying you shouldn't sleep around. Sleep around, please. You're very welcome. But it's not breaking a vow, that's all, because you haven't got a partner. Do you see my point? You're increasing your attachment, but you're not breaking a vow. There's a big difference. The fourth one is the speech. Don't say words that aren't true. Look at the suffering that causes. And that's why for me over these days, more and more, when you look at the internet, it's like you drown in confusion because you'd never believe a single word you're reading. Or look at Mr. Trump. I mean, the Washington Post tracked every lie he told, and he got a certain number of Pinocchios for each lie. They tracked every lie in his 4 years, whatever it was, you know. Lying is very confusing. And then people believe anything they read. There are all these conspiracy theorists. I mean, you hear some of the wackiest thing that people believe. You can't believe it, you know. So watch your speech. Don't say words that aren't true. Don't mislead people. Now, the thing is, this is the vow, but we speculate. We don't mean to lie, but we're also eager to say the right answer. We'll blurt out anything, you know, and we completely mislead people. Even something as simple as, Robina, what time's that shop open? What time's it closed? 4 o'clock. Are you sure? Yes. And it closed at 3. Oh, I thought it was 4. But shut up and you don't know the truth. Shut your mouth, please. Zip your lip. Don't confuse sentient beings. You understand my point? We don't mean to lie, but we do all the time because we're eager to show we know everything. So just control your mouth, you know. The fifth one is not in the list of 10, but it's no intoxicants. So that's a decision. You don't have to take all these 5. And the only reason behind these vows, don't hear it as being restricted. Don't hear it as someone's trying to force you to be good. You decide to take these vows because you want to develop yourself into in control, highly evolved, wonderful, happy, wise, compassionate person. So, you know, we know ourselves. If you become an alcoholic, you definitely decide you're not going to drink. We all know that. It's sensible. It's practical for your mind. So if you don't, you know, if you want to have a drink occasionally, you don't take the vow. You just don't take it. The vow is to not take. So if you feel you'd like to do that, and the reason you take the vows is to help you develop your own qualities, to develop your mind, to get clarity, to develop discipline, in a beneficial way, not in a kind of restrictive way, you know. And you wouldn't take that vow. So that's the vows. Now I need you to ask me some questions about them to be super clear. You need to be, because there's a lot of confusion about the vows. Any questions? No questions.
I do.
Yeah, go.
It's right here.
Okay. What time is it? 12:30, 11, 12. Okay, go. Yes.
Thank you. With respect to wording, so I was just thinking,
Sorry, darling, say it again.
with respect to phrase and wording, are the vows to the vows to be taken like literally? You don't change them; they are what they are.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
This is a very interesting point. Thank you. I'll explain. As we know, in this Lamb Rim, as I described, there's different levels of practice. So this very first level of practice is it's like the beginnings of practice, where you've got to be disciplined. We're out of control, Buddha says. We're driven by attachment. We're driven by anger. Our body and speech are like the servants of our mind. And look at the world. Look at the mess we make with our body and speech. Now, vows are only about body and speech. They're not about the mind. So the very first level of vows, there's 3 sets of vows as you progress in the Buddhist level. There's the first level of vows, which are the vows of what they call the individual liberation. They enable you to develop your own qualities. So there's no wriggle room with these. They're very strict and clear. You just attempt not to kill, steal, lie, those 5. Then you go to the next level of practice, which is much more profound when you get to the Bodhisattva path, the compassion wing. Now it's still the same. Don't do this and don't do that. But the radical difference here is it's the motivation that impels you to do it is what makes you break it or not. But so in here, you have permission to steal or lie if it's truly motivated by compassion. You can't pretend. You can't just pretend with that. It's very serious. So there's more space there, and they're more profound. The first level are to protect you from future suffering. This lot are to help you wisely help others. Do you understand? Okay, and then the most advanced level are the Tantric Vows. They're the most advanced. Okay, and they're all about behavior, not about the mind. Because behavior is what harms others, isn't it? And behavior is what helps others. So we're training ourselves to change ourselves into a non-harming, actively helpful person. So it's like, as I said yesterday, really vows, we don't, in ordinary life, you don't think about it like that. But if you analyze it, when you learn to drive a car, you make a vow to refrain from hundreds of things. I won't turn the wheel left if I'm going to turn right. I mean, it sounds like a joke, but you do that. You vow not to put the foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brakes. You'd be in trouble. The car would explode. So you learn all these hundreds of things to not do, and then you internalize them. Everything we learn is like that. So there you're trying to become a better driver. Here, these are vows that help you become a better human being. That's the purpose behind them, Whereas we're so used to hearing them as, if you do this, you'll get punished. No, you hurt yourself if you do it. No one's punishing you. Yeah? Clear? What else? Nothing else. That's it. Well, I mean, I don't know. I could say hundreds of things all over again from all the week. We've had all the teachings last week more as the preliminaries to all this about karma, about the mind, about delusions. No need to say more. Unless you have questions. Yes, go.
What happens with the harm that we've caused others in the past? Is there a way that we can fix that?
Fix it. Yeah. Absolutely. This, I think we should talk about again. We did it yesterday, but thank you very much. No, don't. It's excellent. Thank you for reminding me. This is what it's called. We call it purification. So now, given the view, the Buddha's view, that every millisecond of what we think and then do and say, none of it goes astray. Everything it is part of the process of, quote unquote, creating karma. Karma just means action. It starts with the mind. Whatever we think and do and say, we sow seeds in the mind. Every millisecond of what we think and do and say. Nothing goes astray, and it's not just random. Everything leaves seeds in the mind. You're programming your mind, which produces the future person, you. So, given the Buddha's view that we've got past lives, countless past lives, and given the view that we've done lots of so-called negative things in the past, and they've left seeds in the mind that haven't yet ripened as suffering. So one level of practice is what we're discussing here. Live in vows so you stop harming in order to not have future suffering. But you've got all these seeds in the past already from past lives. You don't want them to ripen. So the practice there is to put atomic bombs under them by doing this purification practice. So one is you live in vows that program your mind to turn into a marvelous person so you won't get future suffering. And then second, you do the purification practice every day that purifies the seeds you've already planted before they ripen. This is huge. So like I said 2 days ago, I think, this basic level of practice, you abide by the laws of karma within the context of vows and do the purification practice every day, you have a perfect practice. But all these components that guarantee you the best, most powerful practice for you. You can sit back and relax, So the first one is the vows. And as I said yesterday, and again, this is kind of, the Buddha loves his vows. And basically the teaching in Buddhism is that, okay, we're going to talk about karma more again. We have to explain it. Then we can talk about purification. Okay, so if every millisecond of what we think and do and say sows a seed in the mind that will produce future experiences, first point. Next level of detail, as we've been discussing, if every millisecond of what we think and do and say that's labeled a negative action, which would be one that you do to harm another, driven by anger, attachment, neurosis, look at the universe, please. I mean, look at the world. Look at the body and speech are the servants of the mind. So if you see a person stealing, killing, lying, harming, bad-mouthing, it's not coming from love and compassion, believe me. It's driven by the delusions. So first level of practice, what we're discussing here, is harness the delusions, harness the servants of the delusions, the neurotic states of mind, for your benefit. So the powerful way to do that is to live in vows. So this is the point now. Like we said yesterday, to analyze, when we do an action, let's say as an action of, let's say when when we die, in general in our mind, we need bucket loads of delicious, rich, non-harming karmic seeds in our bank vault. Clearly, Buddha doesn't describe bank vaults, but it's a nice analogy. Because everything you think and do and say, none of it goes astray. It programs you. So at the time of our death, there's detailed teachings on this, as I've been discussing. We need one of our non-killing karmic seeds to be triggered to program us to get another decent human body. So we can deduce, as we've been discussing, a few weeks before we came to our present mother's human womb, no accident, got a strong history with that mother, your mind was programmed at the time of your past death, not more than a few weeks before you found your way to your mother's fallopian tube. One of your strong, non-killing karmic seeds was triggered from a past life that programmed you to go to this present mother's human womb. It's no accident. We create our own causes for our own lives. We created the cause to get a human body as opposed to an ant body or a dog body. And it's from living in vows of non-killing in the past, so delicious and rich. So we need lots of those karmic seeds in our mind. So in order for an action we do to be labeled an action of not killing, which sounds passive, but it's not. It's not just merely not killing. So my example is, here we are sitting here right now, not killing, right? But we're not creating any karma of not killing because the mind isn't involved. We're just passively sitting here, not killing. I mean, the roaches and roaches are happy. We live in peace, but we're not creating any virtue. So it's only when you meet the roach or your ex-boyfriend and you consciously think, I must not kill it. Then when your mind has thought that, because your mind starts with creating karma. Your body on its own doesn't create karma. Your mind does. Mental action, intention, that's the first step. So you're only going to create the karma of not killing. And if we need bucket loads of not killing karmic seeds in our mind to make sure we get even just another decent human body when we die, you need plenty of them in your bank vault. So you only drop those seeds into your bank vault when you intentionally decide, I will not kill the cockroach. I will not kill that ant. But how often do we do that in a day? Not that often. So the rest of the time, we're not killing. We're not creating the karma of not killing. It's not proactive. Now, if you have a vow, that's the point. 24 hours a day, you're living in a vow. 24 hours a day, you're living in a vow, even without thinking about it. Even you're down at the bar having a beer, even you're in bed with your new girlfriend, 24 hours a day, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds of non-killing because of the power of vows. That means that's why living in vows, you can't just being good is not enough, as Mama Zopa says. Living in vows is the most potent way to program your mind very easily with lots of virtuous, non-harming habits, Very precise the way they describe it in Buddhism. So, one way is to live in vows. How amazing. You sit back and relax, watch telly, eat your popcorn. Every second you're keeping your vows of not killing, not stealing, not lying. You're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds, and you're also purifying. But also at the end of the day, you can clean up your act. You do the purification practice. So as we've been discussing, and I'll do it again. And by the way, if you do take refuge and you do the vows, you're going to email me, and I'm going to give you, the letter you will receive explaining how to set up a daily practice. I'll send you a PDF with all the practices in it, and there'll be teachings about karma, all the stuff we've talked about. It'll all be there in this PDF, okay? And I'll give you your second name. I'll give you a first name, my name. Then I'll think about it when you write to me, because the ball will be in your court to write to me. I'll give you my email. Then I'll give you your second name, a name especially for you. So then I'll explain all these practices. So they call it the 4 opponent powers. You see, karma is this dynamic process of whatever you think and do and say, sow seeds. So, we want to counteract the negative ones, the seeds especially that haven't ripened yet. We don't want them to ripen. So we do this purification practice at the end of every day. So it's got the 4 steps, the 4 R's is an easy way to remember. The first is recall regret. The second is reliance. The third is a remedy. The fourth is resolve. I'll just say it briefly here. You've heard it before, but it's in these course notes that I'll send, this PDF that I'll send you. And you're not committed in the refuge ceremony to do this, but I highly recommend. I'll request you personally to do it because it's the most marvelous practice. You'll feel sad if you don't do it. It's like cleaning up your act. It's like doing your weeding at the end of the day. Because often throughout the day, we get stressed out, we do bad things go wrong, someone's mean to us, and no wonder we're all stressed by the end of the night, you know. But if you do this, it's like you can go to bed with a happy mind. You're kind of cleaning up your act. And it's you, don't think of it as religion, it's you being your own friend. It's a marvelous practice, I tell you. And it's important to think of it as very down to earth, not some religious thing you're doing. So the first one is regret. I mean, I could spend an hour on this because we so misunderstand it. Our normal default mode is guilt. I did something naughty, I must be a bad person. This is the worst attitude possible. It's literally not true. One of the main functions that we've been discussing throughout the week of attachment and anger and low self-esteem and depression and self-loathing is they over-exaggerate. So anger is you did this and you did that and you did this and therefore you are a bad person. We paint the whole person with that brush of anger. Well, that's exactly what guilt is about ourselves. I did this and I did that and I did this. So then you conclude, I'm a bad person. And we drown in that misery. It becomes paralyzing and it's very natural. It's the irony of ego. We all do it. So we've got to consciously change it. So normally in our life, you know, because of the ego, we either deny we've done something wrong or we blame somebody else or we blame ourselves. Guilt, blame, denial. So you imagine, the Lamas always use the example of if you've eaten poison, right? Imagine if you just had, let's say Bryce has got poison in his dinner. So I see him eating his lunch at that cafe. God, Bryce, I know that thing in there, that's poison. And he goes, who put poison in my dinner? And he starts trying to find who to blame while he's dying, you know. How idiotic. Now, what if he says, oh, I'm a bad person, I've eaten poison, there he is dying, getting sicker, I'm a bad person. How ridiculous, what a waste of time. Or denial, there is not Robina while he's dying, you know. We instantly, ego has to defend itself. Either we put all the blame here, we put all the blame there, or we deny. This is the irony of ego. It's a mess. So this regret is a practical one. It's brave and courageous. You own the fact that you did do it. You did kick the dog. You did cheat on your girlfriend. You did lie, steal, kill, whatever, you know. But then you don't go, and therefore I'm a bad person. You say, what can I do to fix it? There's no karma you can't purify. There's not a single millisecond of anything we've ever done in the past that's neurotic and deluded that we can't clean up before it ripens, of course. I mean, my friends in prison, I mean, working all these years with people in prison. I mean, there they are, killed somebody, raped somebody, all the gangsters and everything, you know, completely depressed. I'm an evil person. And they hear that you can purify. It's like a liberation for them. Many of my friends in prison, what's happening? We need a break, do we? We have to stop and have a break, okay? Wait, can you two please wait? Can you please both wait? We have to finish properly and have a break. And then when you come back, we'll pick it up again. We'll do it formally. So we'll just have a 5-minute break, okay? Please, forgive me. So we've stopped the session. And now we're going to go and go to the toilet and we'll come back in 5 minutes. But I'll go out as well. No action we've ever done. First of all, there's no action we ever done, said or think that doesn't sow a seed in the mind. And there's also, before the seed ripens, there's no seed you can't pull out. Which is why this guilt thing, I'm hopeless, I'm bad, I'm no good, is one of the most destructive attitudes we could have. Everything's impermanent. You're not innately bad, you know, we're not, but we think that. We paint the whole of ourselves with one action, I'm a bad person. This is the worst suffering we have in our world. We know that it's low self-esteem, the self-loathing we have. And we're convinced it's true. This is the worst crime against ourselves. Everything's impermanent. There's nothing we can't change. We should develop this optimism, this logic, you know. Then we can develop ourselves into the person we want to become. It's up to us. Sure, the world's a bad place. Terrible things happen. There's terrible suffering on this planet. Terrible suffering. Look at the world every day. Bombs coming, unbelievable racism, unbelievable sexism, unbelievable everything. Of course the world is suffering. But there's nothing we can learn to become our own person, our own boss, you know. So the first step is regret. We have to own responsibility for things we've said and done and thought that are programming our mind with rubbish. We don't want suffering. The first one, regret, is like compassion for yourself. Who wants to program themselves into an ugly, horrible, mean, depressed, angry, hopeless person? Nobody. So you acknowledge, I did this and I said that and I did this. But then you say, what can I do to fix it? So many of my friends in prison, they kill people. Sure, I mean, gangsters I know, these Mexican gangsters in Los Angeles, in California. It's their job. You can't bring the person back to life, but you can change your mind. You can regret the action because out of foolishness, you decide, I did do that action. I was ignorant. I didn't realize what I was doing, or I chose it for the wrong reason. I thought it was useful to kill, but it wasn't. I harmed my own self. You first regret's like for yourself. Then you think, well, whom can I turn to give me the medicine to fix myself? And that's the Buddha. So we do a practice where we visualize the Buddha above our heads. That particular practice you might all be aware of, Vajrasattva. And then the second part is now you have compassion for the person you harmed. And if you're brave enough, you have compassion for those who've harmed you. Why? Because they will suffer in the future. Third is you do the practice. You visualize the Buddha, you say the mantra. This is a practice you might be familiar with. I don't know if there's any time to do it. There's probably not. And fourth is you make determination to change. You decide if you've taken vows, you reiterate your vows. I will never kill, I will never steal, I will never lie. But, if you've got old habits like bad-mouthing your boyfriend or whatever, or being lazy or eating too much food, you don't lie to yourself and say, I'll never do it again. You make some decisions. In other words, you're able to program your mind to gradually change your mind. It's a very personal practice. I think it's like being my own friend. It's not religion. It's psychology. We can mold our mind into any shape we like, as Lama Zopa says. It's all in the book anyway. That's the PDF you're going to get, and I'm sure you've done it before. So by living in vows, taking refuge, doing a bit of practice every day, living in your vows, being delighted about that, purifying at the end of the day, reiterating your vows, you go to bed with a happy mind. You've got a good, solid practice that you can gradually build on as you develop in your spiritual path. This is the sort of the groundwork, the foundation. Okay? You know that practice? You've done it? No? You with the blue. Who asked the question? You, sweetheart. You haven't done it. You don't come to the center. Oh, okay. What, darling?
It's my second time.
Your second time? Okay. How come you came here? Who dragged you along? Cynthia.
But I've been receiving from
Her advice and teaching. Very good, darling. Okay, fine. Well, she can help you with all this then. She knows. Okay, darling. Any questions? No questions.
Yes.
Yes. Where are you?
Question.
Yes, go.
So you talked about the karmic seeds of when you decide not to kill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what occurs for the person that doesn't even have that thought when they kind of go to
Doesn't have what?
Doesn't even have that thought.
This is the tragedy. If you don't realize you're doing negative things, or you don't think it matters.
No, you don't have the thought to kill at all.
Oh.
You never have that thought.
So what's your point?
One person is benefiting because they had the thought and they said no to it. But is the other person even?
So I'm a bit confused then. Ask me the question again. Okay. If what happens? What?
You're saying that they get a karmic seed.
Every time you think a thought, every time you think a thought,
right,
that's the beginning of the process of creating karma.
Right.
So you program your mind in that thought. If there's never the thought, you're not programming your mind in that thought.
So the person who had the thought, I want to kill, and said, don't kill, got the benefit of it. But the person that never even had the thought to kill it doesn't even get the benefit.
Okay, the way you're asking the question implies someone's running the show here and punishing and rewarding. The language you're using, it sort of seems like it's not fair, the way you're saying it.
No. I'm just saying that it's
ironic
that the person that has the thought to even kill is getting the benefit. Because you're saying there's a karmic seed.
I know your words very well,
okay,
but I'm trying to get you to look at the way you framed the question. Okay. It was sort of like a bit like punish and reward model. Feels like you're suggesting it's not fair.
No, it's not that it's not fair, but
you're suggesting. Sweetheart, you've already said it to me 3 times. I've heard you. I'm trying. I beg you to let me try and get to you, just suggesting the way you said it. So let me say it in my way and see if this answers your question.
Fair enough.
Forgive me.
No.
I'm trying to communicate. So you're saying there's a person who's now decided to say to become a Buddhist, and they've decided to take a vow not to kill. They did kill before, then you change your mind. Yes?
No, I'm not talking about
that's your first person. That was the first one you said. Was that not the first person?
I'm not talking about the vows or not. You're just I'm repeating what you said before, is that the person has the idea to kill, they say no, they get a karmic seed.
You don't get a karmic seed, okay. You program your mind in that. You program your mind. You sow a seed in your own mind by everything you think. That's the point.
Got it.
Whatever you think sows that seed. Let's say use the analogy of seeds. So you decide to not kill. Then you program in your mind in the tendency to not kill. You decide to play piano. You program in your mind in the habit to play piano. So now that's one example. What's this other person? What's this other person?
The karmic seed has nothing to do with the future anyways. It's just programming who you are.
I didn't say those words at all.
Okay.
Now we have to keep asking until we're clear with our language.
Okay, fair enough. So let's go through the example. Let's go through what occurs when somebody has a thought. Tell me that process is a karmic
Everything.
resolution.
Yeah, everything. No. Everything is, maybe there's an assumption of what karma means for you.
Okay.
There's a different way of saying it. There's the law. The word karma is shorthand for this natural law that Buddha has observed, that everything anybody thinks or says or does programs, I use that term, programs that person into the person they become. Does that make sense? If you decide to play piano, every day you play piano, you're turning yourself into a musician. Would you agree with that?
All right, yeah.
Every time you kill, you're getting better and better at killing. You're programming your mind in the tendency to kill. You agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
So those seeds will go deeper and deeper. And then when you die, that'll ripen as a lower realm rebirth. That'll ripen as a tendency to keep killing. That'll ripen as you getting killed. And it'll ripen in an environmental way. You reverse it for the good things. Every day you think of not killing, especially if you think of not killing in the context of a vow not to kill, you program your mind powerfully into becoming a non-harming person. And then when you die, you will always get a decent human rebirth. You will never have the thought to kill again. You'll never be harmed or killed by others. And you'll have a very delicious environment that'll make you fat and healthy. So these are the consequences in the long term of killing or not killing. So because you know you don't want future suffering, even now, but for future, you then change your mind and decide to not kill and not steal and not lie. That's the karmic process. So given that, what's your question?
No, I'm done now.
Now we're done. Now we're communicating.
What has occurred to me is the person that never had the thought.
Never had which thought? No, wait. Never had which thought?
To kill the cockroach in the first place.
Okay, that's because they've lived in vows in the past. But, if they don't start thinking it again, that karma will run out and their tendency from other lives to kill will start ripening, which is why we need to live in vows of not killing. So right now we don't have the thought not to kill at this moment, right? Because there's no sentient being in front of us. But we're not creating the karma of not killing because we have to have the thought to create the karma. We want that. That's why. So that's an additional point. Why first you don't kill is because you've not killed before, which is incredible. But you don't sit on your laurels because eventually that karma will run out. Do you understand me here? So that's why it's excellent to want to live in a vow not to kill, then you get ahead of the game. And then 24 hours a day, you're keeping that vow even without thinking about it. You're kicking over positive karmic seeds and programming yourself very deliciously for the future. We are now communicating, aren't we? Thank you so much for persevering. It's good. Thank you, sweetheart. Yes, Bryce, you had a question.
So I was just, and that kind of actually answered my question a little bit.
Okay, good.
I was wondering, so let's say...
I think you need the mic so people on Zoom can hear you, darling. We need to have people here on Zoom who hear you as well. Can I have the mic, please? I didn't bother with what's your name again, darling?
Phil.
Phil. I didn't get Phil's question, but did you hear him online? Because Phil's got a strong voice. Did you hear Phil's talks? You did. They heard you, Phil. Don't worry about it. Okay, go. All right. Yes, go, Bryce. Keep it close to your mouth, honey, so I can hear you. Yeah.
Let's say you committed a bad action. I don't know if you would say bad action.
If you like, you harm somebody or do something naughty, yeah.
Yeah.
We all do. Then?
How would that create suffering? Is that
for you? If a person say if I killed somebody, how would that create suffering for me?
You could say even less than this. Let's say
I
stole a chocolate.
There you go. I understand. Okay. No, exactly right. It's a perfect question. There's the short term and the long term, if you like. The short term and the long term results. The Buddha's general view about karma, as I've been saying to Phil, is that for example, you coming into this life, we tend to think, well, our mother made us, or God gave us a soul or something. I'm not being rude, but they're the options we tend to think of who we are. Would you agree? How we come into this life? Well, if you're a materialist, you think your mother made you. And if you're a Christian, God gives you a soul. But in both of those cases, there's no Bryce before that, is there? Are you with me? The Buddhist view is that your consciousness goes back and back and back. I'll talk about Bryce. This is an example. Your consciousness goes back and back and back. And everything you've done and said and thought in these countless past lives has programmed your mind. So the time of your past death, a particular karmic seed of non-killing was triggered. This is one of the results of non-killing. A strong non-killing tendency of yours was triggered before you passed away, and that programmed you for when you die a few hours later, that you found your way to your present mother's human womb. You created the cause to get this mother in this life, and that father, and that condition, and the tendencies in your mind are all your past habits. You don't get them from your mother. You don't get them from a creator. They don't just come from nowhere. So you have been programmed, if you like, by your past practice. You come into this life. You've got a human body. Now, I know from our discussion with you right at the cafe, you've been reading about Buddhism. So you've got a tendency in your mind to want to be a good man. You've thought about Buddhism, but also like the rest of us, you've had a tendency to steal or kill or lie, let's say. Some people will do these things. So then you're asking, how does that affect you? Well, everything you think and do and say produces results. So actions that you do motivated by kindness and love and compassion, they are going to program you into a nice person now, but when you die, you're going to get the results of that, which is continuing to be programmed you'll get another human birth, you won't have any tendency to lie, no bad things will happen to you, and you'll live in a nice environment. So Buddha's basically saying we create ourselves from life to life. Everything you do that's labeled negative, which is driven by anger, attachment, and all those, that can only produce suffering. Now, if you look in the world now, look at the suffering. It's all produced by those people from their past lives. Look in the world now, you see some people who are happy and have good experiences and have money in the bank and nice friends. We've all got a bit of both. All of those experiences are the fruit of our past actions. That's the general Buddhist idea about karma. So we don't want future suffering, so we try to live in the vows of not killing, not stealing. We're producing a nice person, and when you die, you're going to continue to produce a nice person.
I think I understand what you're saying, but unless there could be like a physical suffering, like if you stole something, you could go to jail. That's like,
well, that's now. This is true. But what's interesting about that, I'll tell you. What's interesting about that, this is what I'm working with people in prison for the last 25 years, and many of my friends, the ex-gangsters in Los Angeles and whatever, this is the point. In general, you can say stealing now can get you caught and you go to prison. What a drag. Well, excuse me. Lots of people are in prison from not stealing, and they still get caught and blamed. So that's pretty heavy. So that is actually, being imprisoned is not the direct result of stealing. That's an indirect result from past an action like that in the past. Stealing brings a direct result of being stolen from or continuing to steal, which comes in the future. So yes, those are the negative tendencies that can happen now, but there are other karmas. I mean, there's too much to talk about now, but yes, in general, you're right. But we can also see, like I said, if you don't steal and you get accused, I mean, look at the people in prison who are innocent. I know so many. Then we think, what the hell is the cause of that? You get blamed for something you didn't do. That's also past karma from many past lifetimes. There's a lot to talk about now at the end of the session, Bryce. If you'd come earlier in the week, you would have heard all of this.
I will